If you've played video games in the last 40 years, there's an extremely high chance you booted up something that was published by Activision. A name that, similar to EA, also probably elicits a bunch of mixed reactions. Originally put together by 4 ex-Atari developers, they'd quickly become a recognizable name in the 80s with titles like Pitfall, River Raid, and Kaboom. From small beginnings as a developer on Atari consoles and PCs, to the powerhouse sequel factory AAA mega publisher in the 90s and 2000s, to endless mergers, controversies, acquisitions, and now just being a part of Microsoft gaming. Activision's been through a lot. 46 years and still not a single sequel to Dragster. 500,000 copies sold and nothing. Like 'em or hate 'em, Activision's probably responsible for something you loved playing at some point, be it mainstream hits like the Call of Duty franchise, highly praised AAAs like Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, or games you had semi-permanently in your PlayStation 2 like X-Men Legends 2 Rise of Apocalypse. There's an endless list of studios, franchises, licensed IPs, and original ideas to pull from, which also means there's a whole bunch that's slowly becoming more obscure. Like sure, Ghostbusters coming out in 1998 on the NES has a lot of notoriety for its everything. But surely something like Spycraft, the great game, the Activision developed FMV title with famous actors where you play as an agent of the CIA, digging through a now hilarious interface looking for clues and experiencing a full narrative is a little less known.
Yeah. Hey, so I cheated. There's no rules in the field, kid. Just because.
The point being, there's nearly 5 decades of Activision video games out there, so there's bound to be a bunch of weird and forgotten stuff that's fallen off the radar. So buckle up, because when else am I gonna get to talk about Jurassic the Hunted? So yo, it's Austin, and today we're diving into a whole bunch of forgotten and weird Activision video games. It seems like y'all liked the one I did on EA a couple months ago, so I figured why not try the other side of the river? No one was buying and shuttering studios like these two. If you can't tell by the video length, we've got a whole bunch of video games to get into, some of which I was able to get with today's sponsor, Whatnot. I've been finding that it's been a lot harder to find retro video games and other hobby-related things in the wild, so I've been using Whatnot to track them down. For those who don't know, Whatnot is the #1 live streaming shopping app, as in it combines live streaming with auctions into one. And you can find just about anything on here. I got modern games, retro games, and I even got some dust covers under my sleeper account, Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
Sonic, nice.
It's not a bad price.
So dust-free, Sonic. You're so dust-free.
Sure. Why not? It all functions really simply. Once you're all registered, you just swipe on the bottom of the screen to bid on the item that you want and cross your fingers. I like the idea of supporting smaller sellers, being able to communicate with people on the fly in case you see something in the background that you want. And where else am I gonna be able to do a live auction for Gundam TCG cards? So if you haven't tried it, scan the QR code on the screen, click the link in the description and get started with Whatnot today, and you'll also get a $15 credit off your first purchase. Also, if you follow my account, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, you'll be automatically entered into a giveaway for $500 Whatnot credit. Follow me over there and the winner will be announced a month from today. Check out Whatnot. Thanks to Whatnot for the sponsor, but for now, it's time to get back into the games. And I think there's no better way to get this started than to go back to the humble beginnings. I want to talk about Activision, the developer. Which is interesting because they were actually the very first independent third-party console game developer. David Crane, Alan Miller, Larry Kaplan, and Bob Whitehead all left Atari wanting a better working environment, better pay, and proper credit for their efforts. And well, it worked for them. And they were sure to let you know, considering most of those games had the Activision logo etched onto the bottom of the screen at all times. Major hits like Kaboom, Pitfall, and other titles would hit Atari platforms and television and home computers, and it was going pretty good until the old video game market crashed in 1983. At this point, they began rapidly publishing titles by other developers like Mind Shadow with Interplay or home ports of Rampage. They even brought other titles from overseas with developers like Sega and Konami with Nightmare and Wonder Boy. Afterburner 2, specifically for the Atari ST, a far cry from the arcade powerhouse, but still Afterburner.
Be careful, be careful, be careful.
And let us not forget their port of Altered Beast. No wise from Wave, unfortunately, but at least we still get... The portfolio was expanding, but Activision would still develop original titles like 1985's Alcazar, The Forgotten Fortress, hitting the Apple II, ColecoVision, Commodore 64, and MSX. A game that actually predates The Legend of Zelda by an entire year that looks pretty similar, just without the whole open world thing. And let us not forget about Hacker, a game with a fantastic cover that tried to be as immersive as possible. The original release didn't come with a single bit of useful information in the manual, meaning it's up to the player to figure out, well, anything. You just start looking at the screen, and that anything being a glorified text adventure game that starts small and ends up with you like hacking robots and saving the world. It's actually got a sequel, Hacker 2, The Doomsday Papers, which does more of the same but harder. 1985's Little Computer People was part of Activision's initiative into software after the video game crash. This hit all sorts of PC platforms in the 80s and was a super simple concept that was in the name. It's not a game with a win state. It's not even very interactive. The idea is that there's like little dudes vibing in every PC, and they actually designed every copy to have a different character with a different name. Not much of a game, but it is super interesting that Square would port this over to the Famicom Disk System in 1987 as Apple Town Story. Seeing Activision and Square on the same main menu is wild. I guess if you wanted to have your TV on with a girl and her cat just vibing, this was the game to get. I'd pick it up just for the soundtrack by Nobuo Uematsu though. This dude would go on to write Dancing Mad 8 years later. In the mid-80s, Activision began establishing different studios to develop games for them, such as Electric Dream Software, who would bring us Millennium 2.2, and eventually its sequel, Dodoros: The Next Millennium. A pair of sci-fi resource management games which, while archaic by today's standards, were certainly impressive in '89. They also put out a bunch of stuff like the C64 port of Predator and Big Trouble in Little China, which is certainly a video game.
We may be trapped.
So let's jump ahead a little bit. When the 90s rolled around, Activision would be developing stuff in-house a lot less. However, some of the stuff they did has stood the test of time. Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure for the, well, everything, is a classic. Technically the fourth Pitfall game, and following up the Japanese-made Super Pitfall, which is not a classic. Mayan Adventure is just about everything a reboot or follow-up should be. In fact, this was originally planned to be step one of Activision reviving a bunch of 80s franchises like Kaboom and River Raid. They didn't get very far with that, which is a shame, but there's a lot to like with this one. It's your standard platforming affair for the most part, although there's a lot of attention to animation and momentum, some of which can be really mean and unforgiving. But it helps that they brought in Kroyer Films of Ferngully fame to do hand-drawn sprites to flesh it out. Look, Pitfall is cool and all, but it's got nothing on MechWarrior 2 31st Century Combat.
What is your situation?
While the original MechWarrior was developed by Dynamix and published by Acti, they brought it all in-house for the sequel, and what we got is a mech driving and shooting game that is still considered to be amongst the best of the best. Part of the FASA Corporation's wargaming Battletech franchise that also included Mech Assault 1 and 2, my faves, MechWarrior 2 was considered somewhat of a technical marvel at the time. This is a DOS game in '95 without sprites? That's wild. The low poly look has aged well. It feels retro stylized now, and the FMVs are nostalgic in the Beast Wars kind of way. You either love it or you don't.
Defend the... There he is, my little guy.
Unlike Mech Assault, the Warrior games were way more about tactical simulation. The controls for the battle mechs were complicated. Physical copies actually came with this big old key card showing you like the full breadth of the keyboard that you would be using. There's a lot to keep track of, especially because people weren't using the mouse to aim much back then. This was the type of game you'd want to buy a joystick for. It just made you feel cool. It's hardly forgotten. I just wanted to talk about MechWarrior 2 to be honest. And the fact that this isn't available to buy anywhere is a big stupid shame, because I think it's one of those games everyone needs to try out just to see what cutting edge used to be. Endless single color polygonal shapes, MIDI music, FMVs, and goofy looking menus you'd navigate like you were playing Myst. Go play MechWarrior 2. 3 is also really good, also both Mech Assaults, but Battletech's kinda good. There is another mech game that is more forgotten though, Heavy Gear 1 and 2. Now, Heavy Gear is a sci-fi universe with a bunch of tabletop games in it. We got a war game, an RPG, there was even a card game and an animated TV show. After the crazy success of MechWarrior 2, Activision actually lost the rights to the BattleTech universe as Microsoft scooped it up, which, to be fair, led to some awesome games, including Crimson Skies. But wanting to continue making dope-ass mecha video games, Activision bought into Heavy Gear, the first of which received mixed reviews. Also, quick aside, I've used the word clone to describe games that are like slightly derivative, but it's funny going back to see the amount of times killer was thrown around. Apparently everyone was touting Heavy Gear as a mech killer, which is just a ridiculous statement and honestly a cool sounding name for a game. Anyways, Heavy Gear was unfortunately seen as a knockoff that was underbaked and released too soon. However, the sequel, Heavy Gear 2, is way better. Coming out in 1999 and clearly taking inspiration from Activision's other game, Battlezone, Heavy Gear 2 brought the scale of the robots down a good bit and increased the overall speed of things to more closely resemble a first-person shooter. The reviews were remarkably better, the performance was solid, the shooting and robot customization was up to snuff and everything that you would want. It just unfortunately completely failed to reach an audience, selling less than 30,000 copies in its first year, leaving the franchise up in the air. It doesn't help that MechWarrior 3 came out 2 weeks prior. Heavy Gear 2 is an underrated gem for sure. As of 8 months ago, there was actually a Heavy Gear 3 announcement teaser, not under Activision, so hey, maybe we'll see a proper return to the Badlands in the future. Either way, games with robots where you shoot other robots are good. Activision wasn't afraid to mess around with FMV games in the 90s. The previously mentioned Spycraft was widely regarded and is still good today. There's a mini-series of games using the same engine as Spycraft called Santa Fe Mysteries. We got Sacred Ground and the Elk Moon Murder, both where you're solving crimes in the desert. Activision spent a lot of money on these actually. The shots are high quality, there's a lot of dialogue choices, and they're not terrible. I mean, I love these menus, the font choices, like everything is screaming mid-90s celebrity worship magazine. Some of the frames around pictures look like someone used the spray tool in MS Paint. They probably did. This reminds me of that one mech game, Maya Quest. It hits the nostalgia right in the heart, although I feel like you could find way better in the genre. Although only Santa Fe Mysteries has Ducat from Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
I want answers, and I want the right ones.
It's not going to work, you know?
What are you babbling on about now?
There's a good bit of stuff we could talk about, like Civilization Call to Power, the time Activision wanted to make their own Civilization ripoff, and then were denied the name for the sequel, or maybe even Return to Zork, Activision's first time with the Zork franchise, an absolute bizarre experience that's endlessly quotable.
I need a new battery. Can you hear me? A new battery.
Have you ever tried to milk a cow with cold hand?
No! No!
But for now, I want to end with a little hidden gem and something I'd never heard about until this video, Interstate 76. Interstate 76 is a vehicle combat game that takes place in an alternate 1976, but it's not the vehicle combat you might be thinking of. While your Twisted Metals have you using over-the-top power-ups, I-76 says, what if Mad Max took place in the Southwest where everything was ruled by vigilantes? And the end result is a game that is way better than you'd think. You take control of a guy named Groove Champion and his royalty-free Plymouth Barracuda, the Picard Piranha, as you go mission to mission trying to keep the Southwest clear of criminals. I love the visual style they went with. Lots of polygons, no facial features, all style.
Groove, you did well.
Damn straight I did. Killed that guy.
I-76 has you doing missions, scavenging the aftermath to upgrade your vehicle, managing ammo amounts, and the quality of your builds, all while dealing with some janky-ass driving. Yeah, honestly, that might be an issue with the good old games build on Windows 11, because I mean, look how fast these clouds are going. The Earth is spinning like crazy.
Listen carefully. Hit the jump straight. Real straight. You dig?
Jump?
Yeah, okay, maybe my build's a bit busted. But I love its semi-open approach to level design. A majority of the storytelling happens with radio chatter on the open road and the occasional funky cutscene. During missions, you'll be looking at your notes to see objectives, physical maps to try and figure out where you are. It's an old school joy. Funny enough, I-76 has a ton of online multiplayer modes, and it seems like as of a few years ago, there's still an active community hopping on the Nitro pack every now and then. Looking at proper footage of this game is fantastic. fantastic. You can really see the love that went into these intricate physics systems. It was ahead of the game. Heck, cars even displayed damage on them, which was not something I expected from this random-ass PC game from 1997. There is actually a follow-up to this that came out 2 years later, Interstate 82, whose reviews were way less favorable. A lot of aspects were simplified to the point where it loses the weighty charm of the original, and even though it still sports the corny intro action sequence and some fun 80s style music, it comes off like a low-rent Twisted Metal clone. There's still a lot of fun to be had, but honestly, there's nothing quite like Interstate 76. First-person off-road car combat is way better than you'd think. Alrighty, that's enough about the early days. When Activision decided to start publishing stuff, they were publishing everything. Good stuff, bad stuff, footing the bill for foreign releases, licensed games, and whatever the heck Tongue of the Fatman was. Activision does it all. That sure is a cover. Tongue of the Fatman is an MS-DOS fighting game released in 1989 with a banger of a theme song. Welcome to the Fight Palace, home of Mondu the Fat, who, wow, I hate this. Tongue of the Fatman, also known as Mondu's Fight Palace on the C64 and Slaughter Sport on the Sega Genesis, is considered one of the worst games of all time, full stop. Any moment you're playing this thing, heck, looking at it shows you what I'm talking about. It's pure unadulterated jank from start to finish. The sound effects are miserable. The idea of a combo is non-existent, and I really think that it got a lot of people playing it as pure copium from PC players not having a proper fighting game. It's good to know that no matter the port, Mondu the Fat is appalling. Street Fighter 2 sure changed everything, huh? But yeah, Activision does in fact do it all. If you go forward to the year 2000, Activision started expanding their publishing efforts and did a little magic to keep their name more intact by introducing the Activision Value brand. Yeah, this was basically a consolidation of Expert Software, Elsnore Studio, and Head Games Publishing into a group whose mission was in the name. Budget-priced software and games for everyone. Name a tycoon, you got it. Like Mall of America Tycoon, if you wanted to pretend that Camp Snoopy was still a thing. Just a whole lot of cheap stuff like Shrine Circus Tycoon, SeaWorld Adventure Parks Tycoon, Donald Trump's Real Estate Tycoon, Atlantis Water Tycoon, and let us not forget National Lampoon's University Tycoon. A game that totally rips off The Sims visual aesthetic that also houses some vile stoner NPCs telling you what to do. Well, let's see what else we got. Generator Rex, Agent of Providence, Monster Garage, a whole bunch of History Channel games, both real-time strategy and first-person shooter. Or maybe you played The Hustle, Detroit Streets, which sounds like it'd be some kind of Grand Theft Auto clone, but no, it's just billiards. Yep, this one's for the Ballmancers. Look, there's just like a whole lot of video games that don't sound like real things, like Oval Office, Commander-in-Chief, Big League Sports Summer, Wii Shovelware of course, there's Virtual Villagers, The Lost Children, also known as Virtual Villagers 2, a god real-time strategy survival isekai game. These were all the types of games that you would imagine finding in the bargain bin or the shelf ends of Circuit City. A lot of them are probably massive nostalgic hits for at least 10 people, and I don't have anything negative to say here, though I can't imagine anyone's waxing poetic about Secret Service in Harm's Way, or its sequel in 2008's Secret Service, which actually made its way all the way to the Xbox 360. Whew, look at all those reviews. Look, Activision published a whole lot of shovelware, too much for me to talk about in one go-through. Some daunting legendary titles such as one of the worst video games of all time, like Gods and Generals. However, I find it bizarre that amongst all of this nonsense and shovelware was a PC port of a Japanese-only Dreamcast anime fantasy real-time strategy game called 100 Swords. Now, around the time the Dreamcast came to its untimely demise, Sega teamed up with Activision to bring a lot lot of its bangers to Windows. We got Sega Bass Fishing, Sega PC Smash Pack 1 and 2, House of the Dead 2, Virtua Tennis, Crazy Taxi, and of course, Sonic Action 4-pack, because everyone needs to play Sonic R. So I just find it strange that Smilebit's 100 Swords, which had not been localized, made it over as well. 100 Swords might look familiar, mostly because it features character designs by Yoshio Sugiura of Phantasy Star Online and Operation Darkness fame. So right off the bat, it's kinda cozy. This old Dreamcast visual style sure is nostalgic for me, although it's definitely weird to picture this as a real-time strategy game on a console with this controller. Surprisingly, that actually works pretty well. Fresh off of Jet Set Radio, developer Smilebit went in a totally different direction making this, and while the idea of playing a real-time strategy game with a controller at this time was literal pain, see StarCraft 64, or better yet, StarCraft 64 multiplayer, they have it simplified to a point where things flow well. The PC port that Activision brought, however, added in proper mouse controls, changed the interface and camera positions, and felt more in line with what you would expect from the genre. Unfortunately, getting this version up and running is a bit of a pain on Windows 11, and after a while, my sound effects stopped working, but I'm glad I had a chance to play it at all. The gameplay is a little simple, and the movement is pretty slow. There's not a whole lot control over what is going on in the midst of combat. However, it's one of those games that, despite me never hearing about it, once I booted up, watched the narrative unfold, and the character models trot along, it felt so familiar. I mean, just listen to this. But who am I kidding? If you want to play some true Activision value, there's always Shrek Gameland Activity Center.
But don't hit the slugs, Shrek's saving them for dessert.
There's a lot of stuff out there that'll make you go, why did Activision publish this? Like Bomberman Tournament for the Game Boy Advance, aka let's make a Zelda clone starring everyone's favorite bomb-hurling dude. Half Pokemon, half Zelda, probably leaning a little more into Hudson's other title, Newtopia, actually, but still, considering only half of the Bomberman titles were getting global releases, I guess Hudson passed on this one and let Activision take the reins for Bomberman's story, and the end product is pretty good. You're doing a mix of dungeon crawling and monster collection / battling through a large open map, getting upgrades, power-ups, and this one might be kind of a sleeper hit. Whoever thought it was a good idea to combine all of those ideas deserves a raise, retroactively. How's about Biometal for the Super Nintendo? The time Acti took a classic Athena shoot 'em up, ripped out the soundtrack, and changed it completely. Here, give it a listen. Sound familiar? You ever been to a sporting event? Well, that's because it's just literally too unlimited. They went, how do we sell this? Slapped the band logo on the cover and something that looked like a xenomorph and said, y'all ready for this? Then we got something like the previously mentioned Jurassic the Hunted, coming out all the way in 2009 for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Wii, and PlayStation 2. You can already tell how this is gonna go. Oh, that's not good. I hope you like raptors, because they're gonna be coming for you every waking moment. Jurassic the Hunted has you in control of ex-Navy SEAL Craig Dillon, Johnny Two First names, as you head over to the Bermuda Triangle, a place where only good things happen in fiction. You wake up, talk to yourself a little bit.
What the heck was that?
Walk around looking for clues, pick up tons of guns, and blast dinos away in a concept that should be awesome, but unfortunately is kind of a stinker. One with sound effects that clip the audio gate at all times.
Dinosaurs. I hope that weapon still works.
I think Jurassic the Hunted's been forgotten over time. I remember renting this immediately upon seeing the cover. I mean, it's a dinosaur with a crosshair on it. What's a guy not to like? However, the entire campaign will run you 2 to 3 hours, maybe generously, with gameplay that rarely deviates from what you're looking at. And let us not forget 7th gen frame rates. Plenty of gamers know that Activision and licensed games used to frolic hand in hand, so much so that they had to drop a big PR statement saying that they were stepping away from doing them. And we've covered a bunch, like the TMNTs, the James Bond, heck, we've covered all the licensed games they made with Platinum years ago, in case anyone forgot about Korra. It goes back as far as Ghostbusters and Predator in the 80s, with a relentless amount of stuff in the 90s, one of which was The Fifth Element. Yeah, I bet only a handful of y'all out there knew that The Fifth Element had a video game. Developed by Callisto Entertainment, who brought us Nightmare Creatures and Castleween, The Fifth Element is one of my favorite films of all time. Bruce Willis and the entire cast are so captivating in it. Gary Oldman kills it as Zorg, Lilu is endlessly quotable, and it's that kind of fun sci-fi film that you rarely see these days. Look at all these prosthetics and practical costumes. 9 out of 10. We'll probably watch again right after writing this. Following the movie loosely, and I do mean loosely, The Fifth Element, the video game, has you playing as Corbin and Lilu through several levels, mostly the same ones back to back as each character, killing enemies, unlocking doors, and trying to figure out how to deal with annoying tank controls. And that's annoying tank controls while being shot from all directions. I'm pretty sure all the baddies are aimbots, and the only way I figured out how to not eat shit is to do one of these. Yep, that's The Fifth Element. At least you could tell the developers enjoyed the world. There's no mistaking it for anything else visually. Just look at the multipass, look at Corbin's face. There's small stuff like Chris Tucker's character doing his signature scream anytime you pick a level. It's just a shame that the game runs, plays, and feels like a complete mess. And I'm not sure why they have you fight Zorg in the game, considering it's iconic that him and Corbin never meet in the movie. At the very least, you'll get rewarded for sticking through the mess with low-quality FMV clips from the film. When was the last time a licensed game had actual movie footage? I kind of missed the movie clip to low-quality gameplay transition. Keeping it sci-fi, Star Trek Elite Force 2 is pretty freaking good. The sequel to Star Trek Voyager Elite Force by Raven Software, Elite Force 2 was picked up by Ritual Entertainment a few years later and is actually a lot better than I thought it'd be. The original is a classic, and Elite Force 2 picks up the threads and continues to run with it. You're still Monroe, you're still running around with the Hazard team, and this time you can see what happens if you fail the intro mission and get assimilated.
We wish to improve ourselves.
Whoops, though to be honest, I'm kind of thinking this one's a Borg. She's holding that question frame like her life depends on it. Elite Force 2 is quality. The campaign's got a good length to it. There's a lot of detail in the USS Enterprise E, and even Starfleet Academy is highly detailed. There's a whole bunch of weapons to use, different enemy types. It's fully voiced over. Heck, they had the budget to bring in Patrick Stewart and several others to reprise their roles.
I beg your pardon?
I led the Hazard team on Voyager, sir.
Hazard team?
Yes.
Hazard team indeed. Thankfully, this one made its way over to GOG, and it's pretty simple to set up. Honestly, if you're looking for some good-ass Star Trek games that may be relatively unknown to modern gamers who have no idea what Windows XP is, Elite Force 1 and 2 are great. Also, Captain Janeway rules.
Listen to me very carefully, because I'm only going to say this once. Coffee. Black. Yes, ma'am.
And one last licensed game, because we could be here all week with this. Activision made a lot of superhero games. They made a lot of Spider-Man games, but if there's one that deserves way more credit, it's Ultimate Spider-Man. Taking place in the Ultimate Universe, Ultimate Spider-Man is a release with just about every review score you could imagine. Some hate it, some think it's okay, others think it's one of the best Spooder Dude titles ever released. I, for one, love that I get to take control of Venom, and he does feel pretty good. And this dude's first boss fight is Wolverine. You beat his ass. What's not to love, bub? Right out of the gate, Ultimate Spider-Man is a looker. It has this extremely memorable visual style, high contrast cell shading with thick ass lines, like Automodelista with spandex. The animations on Pete and Brock are really fluid, especially for the PS2, Xbox, GameCube gen. Peter's just a 15-year-old in this universe, and he looks and acts like it too. This guy has the saddest story ever, but you wouldn't know it from this game.
Oh man, you're faster than I thought. Now I own you. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, screw you, Johnny Storm. The cutscenes are all directed to look like moving comic books with heavy framing, and it is an absolute joy to look at. Frankly, awesome execution of a unique idea.
Hey, you remember the big rhinoceros-looking guy?
You're gonna have to be more specific.
He's like on the loose.
Oh man, Trig finals next period.
Ultimate isn't without its faults. It can be really repetitive, especially during the Venom sections. You're surviving this endless barrage of bullets, so you'll be spending a lot of time smacking people and then sucking up some health. The open world doesn't feel very populated, and side missions are usually short challenges, like go from point A to B fast, or fight some dudes while going from point A to B fast. Ultimate Spider-Man was developed by Treyarch, coming out a mere year after their sleeper hit with the licensed Spider-Man 2 game, so I think this this one got passed up a bit. The web swinging's watered down, and you have less that you can do in the world, and honestly, I'd probably say 2's a bit better, but Ultimate has a lot of character, and in-game ads. Nokia connecting people. Thanks, Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2 has a massive breadth of extra content to experience, and if you compare the sheer amount of time to beat them both, Ultimate Spider-Man doesn't even come close. I think this is likely a side effect of the quick turnaround and incorporation of Venom, and I still think Ultimate's a really fun game, but I can see why it's way less notable than its predecessor. But hey, none of that really matters when you're just having fun zipping through the city as the arachnid superhero or his symbiote counterpart. That is, unless you're doing the missions where you have to chase Electro around and he hits you a single time, causing you to lose enough distance from him to fail the mission multiple times back to back.
We smoking symbiotes.
Ultimate Spider-Man is a solid comic, a fun licensed video game, and something I think everyone ought to give a shot. If only because the idea of a proper 3D Venom video game is so far away. And also, Peter says stuff like this.
Is it just me or is the Wasp kinda hot?
Well, that was a lot of stuff. So why don't we switch gears for a bit and talk about some of the hidden gems over the last few decades. Games that Activision originally published that I think maybe deserve a bit of your time. Look, I'm just trying to say, if you haven't played Sin, it's pretty good. And wouldn't you know, it's about to get the Night Dive Studios treatment. Originally published in 1998 by Activision and developed by Ritual Entertainment, who we just talked about with Star Trek Elite Force 2, Sin is a first-person shooter and multimedia project. One that unfortunately released at a tough time. By that I mean 2 weeks prior to the original Half-Life coming out and swinging for the fences. And like, yeah, Half-Life's cool I guess, but I for one prefer the constant cursing of Colonel John R. Blade.
Ugly son of a bitch!
Yeah, this guy's name is John Blade. You're essentially part of a super security detail called the Hard Corps that travels the world fighting against crime in the distant future of 2037. This dystopian cyberpunk world is filled with mega corporations, endless heists, and a plot about baddies trying to turn the entire place into mutants. And it's filled with goofy, over-the-top voice acting, corny dialogue, comic book character designs with exaggerated proportions, and an annoying sidekick character in JC. Sin knows exactly what it is.
I'm willing to bet my life you've never seen anything like this before. Watch.
I don't
This!
Oh, hell.
The game itself, while not as revolutionary as its 1998 competition, has a lot of unique first-time features. We've got a few drivable vehicles, multiple slots to equip armor on, as well as interactable computers in-game, some of which require an understanding of old PCs. It's mostly on screen, but if the idea of using a command prompt in a first-person shooter appeals at all, this might be for you. You'll just have to get used to Sin's wacky cutscene choreography with like slow, bizarre, sweeping angles, and I don't know who thought this was good framing. The shooting feels good, although not as tight as other FPSs from the time. You're probably not going to be raking in many headshots, as some guns have slower bullet travel times with a wide recoil, but hey, the level design's pretty alright, although it does have some moments of frustrating difficulty. The soundtrack and vibe is on point, and I think it's still worth playing in all of its late 90s over-the-top glory.
Now what it appears to be is, drum roll please, U4.
But that's not all. We've also got the expansion, Sin, Wages of Sin, a crime on English naming conventions, as well as Sin the Movie, a full-ass anime movie gore fest by ADV Films with lackluster animation, and unfortunately, reviews weren't very fond. Sin ended up getting a sequel about a decade later, Sin Episodes Emergence, which was supposed to be the first in a bunch of these. However, it only sold a moderate amount. Ritual was acquired in 2007 and then unfortunately shut down in the same year. A shame, but hey, at least Night Dive's making the new Reloaded release so we can go back with a brand new fresh 4K skin. Maybe this time they'll make it easier to see in the construction level. It's so dark.
Who's your daddy?
Man, Activision used to bring the fire. 1998's Apocalypse by Neversoft Entertainment is a game we've talked about before, but also something they just don't make anymore. Starring Bruce Willis for the second time in this video, front and center on the cover, it feels like they saw 3D Contra struggling a bit, went bet, and created an all thrills, no frills arcade shooter. One where you fight against all of these spooky things humanity could muster up, and the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse as Trey Kincaid does endless one-liners.
Lock and load! Suck on this! You can run, but you can't hide.
They've even got singer-songwriter Poe playing Plague, who tries to beat your ass as an FMV music video of hers plays in the background. Truthfully, this is about as 90s video games as it gets. Power-up names popping forward on the screen, early motion capture for the nonsensical cutscenes, and quotable exchanges that have stood with me for years.
What's going on out there? Candygram. Well, praise the Lord and pass the ammunition.
Apocalypse freaking rules. And so does Wakeboarding Unleashed featuring Shaun Murray. I think we all know how much of a gaming milestone Tony Hawk's Pro Skater was. Arcadey extreme sports games were taken over in the early 2000s. There was nothing you could do about it. I wasn't immune at all. But Activision didn't want a single dip, they didn't want a double or even triple dip, they wanted the entire bowl of extreme sports queso, leading to the Activision O2 brand popping up, and Acti having a famous athlete for just about every extreme sport you could imagine. Matt Hoffman BMX, Kelly Slater surfing, Sean Palmer snowboarding, and of course, Shaun Murray's Wakeboarding Unleashed. You're going through these levels collecting items, doing special tricks and wacky goals in the exact same way as Tony Hawk, although I enjoyed the wakeboarding aspect. You're like tied to moving in one direction, so while the open exploration is minimal, you're instead experimenting with the momentum and occasionally dropping the rope to find trick runs, some of which basically turn into gaps that are essentially grinding runs from Tony Hawk levels. There's also plenty of ridiculous goals and challenges like boat racing, which isn't quite Hydro Thunder, but I sure love the dumb variety. I think I just like extreme water-based sports. I think you could probably throw a Sea-Doo into any video game and I'd like it, like Wave Race. Do it some more. I dug this one growing up and still, but honestly, that's probably like 90% my fascination with anything extreme sports. Y'all ever heard of Blast Chamber?
Russian blue.
In what I can only describe as competitive tag, Blast Chamber is one of those budget multiplayer games with an extremely simple idea. You grab an orb, you drop it off in your reactor before time runs out, or you simply die. It's one of those things you might have played on a demo disc back in 1996 and never thought of again, but attention to details, a silly little game is actually kinda awesome. It reminds me of all those couch co-op multiplayer games we saw in the 2010s like Towerfall, Duck Game, or Lethal League, just, 15 years prior. And also with a ridiculous audioscape, a healthy amount of jank, and a whole bunch of this.
3 seconds. 3 possession.
Wizards and Warriors. Yeah, that's about as fluid of a transition as I can do. Wizards and Warriors is a game developed by Heuristic Park that was spearheaded by David W. Bradley, most notable for his work on some of the later Wizardry games. Wizards and Warriors, coming out in 2000, is essentially his take on that franchise prior to 8, and it sure is an old school Western RPG. All of your characters are custom made, the stories and quests you embark on are very basic. An evil pharaoh has broken free from his curse and is here to kill everyone, and only you can find the Maven Sword to kick his ass. Not the most original of concepts, but sometimes all you want is a basic, no-nonsense premise. Some of the dialogue is really charming, and I love looking at the NPCs talk.
I have some information for him. Don't tell him I'm coming. I want it to be a surprise.
Ah yes, he seems trustworthy. Wizards and Warriors is obviously too girthy for a video like this, with How Long to Beat swinging in with 50+ hours, but there's a lot to captivate you here, especially if you're the type who enjoys spending a lot of time navigating the old school EverQuest UI and trying to understand why your characters constantly miss. Nothing says old school computer RPG quite like 10 turns of combat without a single hit. Why don't we head back to basics for a second? 2004's Pitfall: The Lost Expedition.
You can talk. Some jags have what it takes, others don't. You mean vocal cords? And there you are, helpless on the ground, when coming down through the air towards you is the dead snake. Its beady, dead eyes fixed on you.
What in the world is this dude talking about? The Pitfall franchise is in an interesting spot. It's always been a big famous name, but the last main title to release was this, 22 years ago by Edge of Reality, who you might recognize from Loadout or Sega's Incredible Hulk movie tie-in game. This was their first original release, and the results were, unfortunately, mixed. You take control of cool guy treasure hunter Pitfall Harry, a huge pervert dickhead right out of the gate who crash lands in the Peruvian jungle where you eventually search for the city of El Dorado. And according to the boss fight throwing Rasengan hands, Harry is played by Steve Blum, who does a perfect arrogant protagonist, and beyond my gripes with this dude sucking, the game itself has a lot of charm. I mean, just look at this. Nothing like a fresh 20 concussions. Gameplay-wise, Pitfall: The Lost Expedition has some interesting ideas. I like its open-world, almost Metroidvania approach. You'll need to run around this map collecting power-ups and abilities that'll help you reach new areas and levels. You get a large repertoire of stuff as it goes on, and there's a nice variety of level designs to keep you going. Sometimes you'll be a penguin, because why not? All in all, it's a relatively standard platforming fare, which was the style at the time. The protagonist may not be super likable, and in 2004, I think Pitfall's name didn't mean as much, but hey, at least we can identify the Lost Expedition for inventing the Dark Souls flask mechanic. Fill up that canteen and drink it down. That's gameplay, baby. Pitfall: The Lost Expedition's pretty okay. Made better by the fact that Harry just straight up rolls in a ball. Look at him go. But there's nothing more obnoxious than the sound effects they recorded for these freaking monkeys, dude. Why is it so loud? And one more gem for the day, mostly because I didn't have time to play through Singularity again. There are few games that achieve cult status and maintain it for several decades. Games that people sing the high praises of, bomb on release, never get a proper remaster, and still have such an impact. Also released in 2004 was Activision and Troika Games' Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. I slept on this for way too long. For those who don't know, Vampire the Masquerade is a tabletop role-playing game set in White Wolf Publishing's world of darkness, originally released in 1991. Yeah, we got a lot of tabletop licenses in this video. Rather than hunting vampires, you were the vampires with all the dark, gothic fun that comes from it. It's less about moving around and smacking dudes and more about crazy storytelling. Bloodlines, the video game, is actually the second one Activision published. In 2000, we had Vampire the Masquerade Redemption by Nihilistic Software, the people responsible for Marvel Nemesis and PlayStation Move Heroes. Wait, what? Redemption is a third-person action RPG, kind of along the lines of Dungeon Siege, Baldur's Gate, or Diablo. Except you're playing as a set crew of characters led by Christoph Romuald as you travel around Prague and Vienna in the 1100s, hanging out with sexy vampires. The visuals were awesome for the time. There's a crap ton of well-written dialogue, and it's immersive in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect. Unfortunately, the gameplay portions could get a little repetitive, and a lack of quick save meant that any mistake would have you doing the same things over and over. Eventually, you actually make your way all the way to 1999, which is hilarious, seeing a vampire dressed in a full cape regalia shooting dudes with a gun, but it all shows how much depth Redemption had for the time. Which brings us to Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, taking clear inspiration from other first-person action RPGs like Morrowind or Deus Ex. We play as an original character and class, one that can be decided on with a quiz. I ended up getting Gangrel, who are basically shape-shifting druids, and having no idea how to play this game, I immediately ran out into the street, killed someone, drank someone else's blood, lost favor with the Masquerade, and got chased by the cops. Oh no. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines puts you in this moody world set in several districts of Los Angeles, and it does a great job of creating something familiar but foreign. It's a lot of small stuff, the fonts of the posters on the walls, the music playing in the clubs, the way people are dancing to the music, probably snapping their own necks. Bloodlines throws you into the thick of it. You're killed right off the bat and turned into a baby vampire, thrown in front of the Camarilla where your sire is ostracized for the turning and promptly vaporized. Then you're sent to Santa Monica to do tasks for the people above you. It's like the supernatural mafia, except you're trying to retain elements of your humanity and keep the council's will in your graces, all while having the power to go beast mode. First-person RPGs are way more common these days, but back then, Bloodlines was a beast. I mean, this is prior to Oblivion. The sheer amount of voice acting, choices you could make, alternate story routes to follow made it a standout. Combat is a mix of third-person punching and first-person shooting that clearly wants you to do vampire things to take people out. You can feast on baddies to restore health, use some of that blood to trigger your abilities, and basically run around evaporating human sauce to do crazy feats. It's funny how weak some of the guns feel in comparison to like smacking a guy and ragdolling him across the room. This is on the Source engine after all, and you could tell. Straight up, I love this game. I can't believe I didn't play it until this year. It's moody, everyone is a sexy vampire or a horrifying vampire. It's very firm in what it wants to be, what it presents itself as, and the world is completely captivating from start to finish. I can't look at Jeanette and not see vampire Harley Quinn. Depending on your character and class, you're able to tackle things differently. Maybe you're not much of a stealth guy. Maybe you can use charisma to shake things up. And it works well until some of the later challenges where they get more combat focused, leading to less agency in your builds, which is a shame. Which brings me to Bloodlines isn't without its faults. At launch, there were a ton of bugs and technical issues. Some of the AI is brain dead, stealth can break entire patterns, and gun combat's just not great. Despite my and several others' praise, at release, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines only sold 72,000 copies, and a majority of the staff at Troika were laid off, eventually leading to the studio's closure in 2005. A shame. However, the cult following of this game has led to tons of unofficial fan patches introducing new ideas and fixing bugs present in the original release. And these are basically pivotal, so much so that these patches were tossed into the official version of the game released on GOG. You're basically not going to be playing Bloodlines without them, and I'm so glad to see the support. Also, shame about the sequel in 2025, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. It's not Activision, and I haven't played it yet, but after its development hell, multiple developers, and impossible boots to fill, Bloodlines 2 seems to have been a major disappointment. At the very least, the original is a fantastic gem, a staple in the RPG genre, something that'll probably never get a proper re-release or polish outside of fan support, and something everyone should try. Although let's not forget that this is still a horror game. It got me a few times. I never said I'm not a coward. Now, we got one more game to talk about today, and it is a little bit of everything we talked about. You look at it and you go, why did Activision publish this? It is a hidden gem, and it's also something that I've never covered on this channel before. If you've never played or heard of Blue Stinger, the Dreamcast launch title, you're in for a treat.
Phew, tough girl. I like it, Janine.
Who the hell is Janine?
My kind of girl, so stay away from her.
Blue Stinger is something else. Activision sure brought a lot of Sega-published games outside of Japan, and Blue Stinger is one of a kind. Developed by Climax Graphics, a brother company to Climax Entertainment, which then got renamed to Crazy Games Incorporated, this is one of the two games they made for the Dreamcast alongside 2001's Illbleed. I guess not wanting to publish it themselves, Activision picked it up and prepared it for the Western console launch September 9th, 1999. Also Final Fantasy VIII Day. You see, you could be listening to Libri Fatale while Squall and Cypher are throwing down, or be watching the intro to Blue Stinger.
We decorate the boat?
The Kimura Tech Group wants to have a Christmas party on this ship.
They choose the zoom. Blue Stinger is an action-adventure survival horror game that takes place on Dinosaur Island. There's this giant bubble time freeze thing that pops up around the island, and you assume control of emergency sea evacuation and rescue team member Elliot Ballard. That's Elliot with one T, and the man, the myth, the legend, Dogs Bauer, as you do the survival horror thing, just with dialogue that sounds like it was written in the camp dimension.
Where are you going? To the island?
I am still a rescuer. There are people there who need help.
What a joke.
Let's be real, the plot's a bunch of nonsense. You're on this island where a bunch of biotech research is taking place. You've got a good luck charm stuck in a tiny bottle called Nephilim that eventually breaks out and starts floating around, guiding you wherever you need to go, where she takes up the entire screen. You run into a character named Janine King who is constantly being hit on by Elliot. Heck, all the characters say stupid, nonsensical things at every possible moment.
First of all, we are not rescuers. I mean, I am. I'm as lost as you are.
Welcome home, tough guy.
This is for you, honey.
What?
Then you're suddenly hanging out in the bathtub, transforming into a mutant yourself, crawling on walls to solve puzzles. Dogs puts on a Santa outfit for a significant portion of the game. You're collecting pin triicelon stamps to make progress. Activision and Climax didn't even have anything to do with pin triicelon. And also that game sucks.
What are you doing? Did you go to Rat's place?
I'm looking for Taco Pen.
Even Julie's sick of the nonsense. I was torn between loving and hating Blue Stinger as I was playing, only to slowly become more fond the further I got. The pure camp, the late 90s survival horror shenanigans. Late producer and co-writer Shinya Nishigaki went on record stating that he wanted to bring out the wit and humor to set Blue Stinger apart from other horror titles from the time, and I think they pulled it off. They made the main character, Elliot, kind of a dickhead. The goofy looking dogs is the stoic guy with the most ridiculous lines, who rocks a different moveset for whatever t-shirt he's wearing, like Karate Time. Probably don't even need to mention how janky it is. Also, look at Elliot's default stance. His stance is so wide, like he's trying to block the door. Interestingly, when bringing this to the States, Activision had them completely change the way the camera operates. The original Japanese release has a camera that follows a more choreographed perspective that'll swoop around depending on what your location in the game is and what's going on. And in an effort to appeal to the Western audience, the English release has it strictly behind your character. So when you're in, say, the Labo Town portion of the game, you're able to see a lot more of the environment as you walk around. The town feels bigger and less like a single hallway, and you don't have Nephilim throwing it back and covering the entire screen in the middle of the worst moments possible. Although you can slightly see what it was like during boss fights, where there's literally no way to make that work from the back perspective. I'm not sure if this is better or worse. I like looking at the gameplay of the Japanese release more, but the visibility is slightly better in some areas with the Western one. Although you'll quickly get sick of the running animations, considering you can see when they hard loop and snap when you're this close. That, and there is definitely some visual storytelling that gets lost. The gameplay itself is okay. It's your standard survival horror affair with tight ammo limits, punishing hits, and damage sponges, but everything explodes into coins when you beat them. So you'll just stock up on money to spend on ammo and drinks to carry on. There are some neat small touches. I like that the bullets pop out of your gun and roll around after shooting, and also that you'll like crush healing cans and toss them on the ground. A dude is littering, get his ass.
Stay with Janine. I kind of have a bad feeling. When it comes to bad luck, my hunches tend to be right on.
Never mind. I don't need a guardian.
And yeah, that's Ryan Drummond, Sonic the Hedgehog. He got 2 launch titles.
God damn son of a bitch.
Movement can become a pain. As you take damage, you'll start to drag yourself around, which looks kind of funny on repeating animations. The music is loud and proud. It fits into the silly themes. The weapons feel powerful, and whenever you engage in melee combat, you're basically hoping you can time the hits to get them stuck in a pattern. It does get a little repetitive, as mutants will respawn anytime you move into another section, so if you miss a key item and need to backtrack, which you probably will, get ready to grind the same dudes over and over, which you might need to do anyways to earn money for items and weapons. Look, it's got issues. Reviews from the time were not kind, with it getting 5s, 6s, and 7s across the board with a few outliers. Some people hated the actual gameplay and puzzles. The voice acting was laughed at, and truthfully, the original camera would have been better. A lot of places dismissed it as a Resident Evil clone, and the lip syncing is, well...
What? You guys know each other?
Sure, it might be an acquired taste, but all in all, Blue Stinger is such a dumb, fun, and stupid game that it's hard for me not to recommend. There's better survival horror titles, there's better Dreamcast launch titles, and better, well, most things, but as a whole package, there's really nothing out there like Blue Stinger, and I'm so glad Activision, of all companies, decided to bring it to an English-speaking audience. The likelihood of this getting ported is close to never with all the companies involved, despite the fact that it sold over 500,000 copies worldwide, so if you ever get the chance, give Blue Stinger a shot. Emulate it, burn a GD-ROM, whatever. Everyone needs to experience Dog's Bower.
I'm gonna take a bath. Nothing's gonna stop me.
What you'll do if the monster attacks you while you're butt naked?
I'll fight back butt naked. Stop whining. Let's jump in the tub.
And so there you have it, a bunch of weird and forgotten Activision video games, and this was barely scratching the surface. I had to cut so many things, and we're still at like a 52-minute long video. That's a lot. Obviously, if there's something from this I recommend you check out, it's probably Blue Stinger or Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, but you can't go wrong with Spider-Man Unlimited either. What are some Activision video games that you think time is kind of left in the dust? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you liked today's video, check out the sponsor Whatnot. Scan the QR code on the screen and save $15 off your first purchase. You can also support us directly by pledging over at the Patreon, buying a t-shirt at the Pixel Empire, or just sticking around watching the things that we put out. I know we had a bit of a longer break than usual, so I thank you guys for your patience and for watching this one. That's why I tried to make it longer than usual. That and I couldn't stop writing about certain games. I'm sure you can tell the ones. Anywho, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm gonna head out for now. I've been Austin, and I'll catch you guys next time. Thank you all so much for watching. Special Patreon shout out to Blackfoot Ferret, Blake Thomas, Cheeks, Clark Fox, Chris Shelton, DX Buster, Hey Quiggles, Jay Roosh, Jacoby Fitzpatrick, Nocturnal Nix, Platinum Rose, Pacha Bear, Rare Find It, Ryan Siri, and Vox. Thank you all so much for your generous support. And thanks to everyone again for your patience. I think this is the longest I've ever had between videos, but your boy needed a little bit of a break, and here we are. We should have more stuff coming this month, and I'm really excited to have it all come together. I'm also really excited to play Saros. It seems awesome. I loved Returnal. What's not to like? What y'all been playing lately? I've been doing a little bit of Gundam TCG and maybe some Final Fantasy 14 again, because new patch. That's how it goes. Anyways, I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye.